In the last video, we looked at counter-controlled loops, and we're going to continue that and just add to what we can do with those loops. So we'll look at this problem. Given 5 numbers, output the average of the numbers. And so first thing we need to do is decide what an average is. So the average, first, we would add up the total of those 5 numbers. So we'll just say we'll add up the sum. And then once you get the sum, you divide that by the number of items. And so in this case it would be 5, but we're looking at just a more general formula. And so that would be it. Add it up and divide by the number of items. So let's just come up with some test values. And let's say we get something like 70, 85, 90, 95, and 100. Let's calculate the average of those. So we're just going to add all those up. And what does that equal to? If we add that up, it's going to be 440. And then 440 divided by the 5 different numbers is going to be equal to 88. So we'll use that later on to test our value. So first we're going to just go ahead and set up our loop. So we know it's counter controlled, so I'm going to set create count, and we'll go ahead and initialize it to 0. And we'll go ahead and set up our loop, so our while loop. And since we have 5, we're going to go in as long as count is what, less than 5. And before we forget, I'll go ahead and put an assignment in here, and we're going to say count equals count plus 1. And that way we'll go through here. So each time we get into the loop, we're going to do an input. So I'm going to say input, and we're going to have to put in some number, so I'm just going to call it number. Okay, so we need to declare that. So up at the top, I'm going to go ahead and declare a variable called number. And we won't initialize it because the user is going to input that number each time. So we now have 5 inputs for numbers, but we need to do something with it. So we're trying to add it up, and so we're going to add it up as we go along. So I'm going to create another variable here, and we're just going to call that sum. Okay, and it's really going to be a partial sum while we're in the loop. So we might call that an accumulator, is another name for it. And I do need to assign sum a value, and since it's going to be a total, I can put 0 in, because 0 added to anything is still going to be the other part, whatever, 0 plus whatever is whatever, right? And so they're going to input numbers each time, and each time I want to add that number to the sum. So we'll put our accumulator in right here. So I'll do an assignment, and that will be the sum is equal to the previous sum, right, plus the current number that they give us. So it's going to take that number each time and add it into the sum. So the first time through, it's going to be 0 plus whatever that number is, so the first number. And then the next time it's going to be, the first number is going to get added into sum. So it'll be the first number plus the next number. And then the next time it'll be the total of those 2 numbers. So it's kind of a running sum. That's why we call it an accumulator. It accumulates the sum over the course of running through the loop. So we have that. That'll add everything up. And just as a test, let's do an output at the end. And we'll go ahead and just output sum to make sure we are getting the right sum. And so just a reminder of the test values, 70, 85, 90, 95, 100, and those should add up to 440. So let's run this, and we'll put in our test values of 70, 85, 90, 95, and 100. And we should get 440, which we do. So far so good. Let's declare another variable. So we'll go up here and we're going to create one more variable for average. And so after the loop is over with, we're going to calculate the average. So we'll do an assignment. And we'll say average is equal to what? The sum divided by, and we could say 5 here because it's set up to be 5. We'll change that in a minute. And then we will output, instead of sum, the average is, and then we'll concatenate in the average variable. Okay, so we'll run this, and let's put in our test values again. And we get the average is 88. Okay, so one thing why I said we were going to come back and change this 5 is, let's say we change this algorithm. We say, hey, we want to do 10 numbers instead of 5 now. We would have to change these two different numbers, right? 10 and 5. So instead of putting 5 here, the better way to do this is to put count in. Okay, and so what we're going to get is the same thing, but because count will end on 5, right? And just to prove that, let's go ahead and put in one more output statement here, and put the count is right, and I'll just go in and put in so yeah, the count ends on 5 because we're going 0 through 5. It's going to stop when we get to 5. So that's kind of a side benefit of starting our count at 0, because going through 5 times we will actually have count stop on 5. So we can just divide by that count here. So yeah, this is just for more debugging purposes, so we'll get rid of that and delete it. And so let's prove that does exactly the same thing. So 70, 85, 90, 95, and 100. And we get the same thing. The great thing is if we decide to make this 10, or let's say for a simpler example 3, I can just change the condition here, and now it's going to do it for 3 things, and I'm still dividing by the right thing here. So if I did numbers, let's do something easy like 3, 4, and 5, we know the average should be what? 4. So yeah, modifying is a little bit easier if we do little simple things like, instead of dividing by 5 here for a specific example, divide by the count, right? And so we'll put this back for the original problem statement, and we'll save that. We will look at more loops next time.